It's your boy Steiner here with my co-host Ducky as always. Ducky, what do you want to say to the people?
What's going on, everybody?
Thank you, Ducky. With us today, he needs no further introduction. The estimable Ryan Kerrigan. Thank you so much for being with us today, sir.
Let's start
I
with you,
have
fellas.
some of your art behind me. I have a lot more of it in other places. Thank you so much for being a part of the program.
My pleasure.
So we have a
Welcome,
traditional
man.
question. We have a traditional question that we ask. Ducky, you wanna ask our traditional question that we're actually gonna ask first due to our tradition?
Yeah. Yeah. If you had no idea kind of like what we were talking about, what our thing was, what would you think someone was saying when they called someone secondhand talent?
Secondhand talent. Well, I'm actually glad you asked that because I was thinking about that once once I saw the name and stuff. My impression would be makes me think of kind of like the mentor apprentice sort of relationship where
Yeah.
knowledge or skills are passed along sort of thing, like secondhand skills that I kind of passed
Yeah.
on from somebody to other.
Yeah,
That even close to what you guys were thinking?
I mean it is. Check out episode 4 with the interview with Mike Layton and to see what that's all about. He is an apprenticing luthier, and I think that that is exactly a great interpretation of it.
Yeah.
Passing it.
Nice.
Everybody who makes the experience what it is, without them, it would not go on.
Okay. The bricks that make up the wall.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good way to
Yeah.
put
I
it.
see
Good way to put it.
all the fish tickets on you behind the wall.
Oh yeah, my trophy wall.
Yeah. So have you
Are
seen
those millware tickets on your right?
Let's see. Right here is this would be like 2000. Here's 14. They're all by year. So
I have
there's
those, yeah.
14, 15, 16, 17. Actually, yeah, like everything from 18 on doesn't fit on the wall.
Yeah.
Starts with 91 over there and goes all the way around the corner. Here,
Damn.
I can show you.
Yeah, no, so oh wow.
What?
That's a little
Dude,
crazy.
that's
I thought I had a lot of stuff behind me. Can you do that one more time?
Wow.
Yeah, so this is just the corner of my studio here. So it's all just those are all just ticket stubs.
Oh, fish nerds.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Geek.
To
Oh,
the next
there's
level
going
for
to be
sure.
people pausing and zooming
So
in. And
are you on Instagram at all?
I am. Yep. Art of Ryan
So
Kerrigan on there.
so have you seen, okay, we'll link it, everyone, but have you seen Trey does this like thing where he goes up to some person who's like on his crew, his
Love it. Love
huge
it. That's
crew,
yeah.
is
That
what are
series
you
is
doing?
fantastic.
That's sort of like that really, once we started this, I told Steiner once, I was like, I think it's in the first episode. It's
well,
talking about
no,
Trey's "What Are You Doing" series and like
no,
how it's
no, no,
really
no.
similar to.
When we were talking about the idea, you told me about Trey's series, and my response
Yeah,
was great. There's only two people in the game, and the other one is Trey.
yeah, yeah.
Awesome.
But
Awesome.
yeah, I mean, it's really just kind of like that, like trying to spread information about them, what they do, and make it a little more like accessible. So you kind of like concerts. I mean, for me, being a secondhand talent, it's really cool. It's a cooler experience to know all the ins and outs of the little things that make a show great. So, I mean, it's to make it accessible, and B, kind of to just to put the spotlight on them for a little bit.
Shine the spotlight on the people who shine the spotlights. I mean, that's kind of one of the phrases we first came up with. And, you know, this is a lot about as well, you know, letting people know that these things that may seem out of reach, right? Like being a concert poster artist or being somebody running lights for a huge band or being that person who's, doing those things that could be you. Everybody that we've had on the show and everybody we will have on the show, everybody, Ducky and I both, we come from humble beginnings. We come from not knowing, or everybody comes from never knowing how to do what they're doing. But you can.
So, what was your first step in learning then?
First step in learning how to do in the poster thing, or
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, gosh, I just kind of started doing it, I always knew I was going to be doing something in art, like growing up if the baseball career didn't work out. And so yeah, I always did actually my first music related art was in second grade where my teacher Miss Barrows, she had us do a record album or album cover. Back when there were still, albums being put out, not like your case behind you there, man. Yeah, and so we had to pick a song of the day and then just illustrate the album. And I remember I did Survivor's Eye of the Tiger. And I
Nice.
did the album cover, and man, I wish I still had it because I could
Was
still.
there something like that where you were like, hey, somebody give me some sort of like step up?
You know, almost every step I've taken like that has kind of been not accidental, but let's say serendipitous.
Yeah.
Like the first posters I ever did were I was at Penn State at the time and living on my dorm. The RA on my dorm floor was in a blues band called Bob Heidi Cat and the Groovy Boots, and he saw that I was doing
It's an
art,
awesome
and
name.
yeah, right. And he approached me and he's like, "Hey, we could use some stuff. We could use a poster and a T-shirt and stuff." I was like, "Okay, cool," and so I did that stuff for them, and in exchange, they got me into their Friday night gig at the local bar, and I was 18 at the time, and they sat me in the corner, got me a pitcher of beer, and I was stoked. And so we did that every Friday for quite a long time, and then the next year I got involved with these other guys who started another band and just started doing posters for them, and that's kind of how it all kick-started. And then
How many posters you do? You said you did it every Friday for a while. How many would you say?
for Bob Highcat, it was just one poster that they would use, like a stock poster they would put in the date actually it was
Yep.
just something that said, every Friday at Zeno's.
Oh,
And then it was
gotcha.
t-shirts, and it was t-shirts for them and stuff like that. So just a few
Free
different things
entry
for them.
first, man. Most of the
Yeah,
shows
right.
that I still shoot a lot of shows that are like free entry.
Oh, for sure. And that was when
I mean,
as an 18-year-old, I wasn't getting in without going in with the band.
real talk though, the reason I started doing stand-up comedy was to get into shows for free. Venues needed someone who would be willing to be on stage and get berated while they broke down the equipment for the next band. And I was like, yo, toss all that abuse my way. I got this. Is that if you're shooting your shot and you're really trying to put yourself out there and establish yourself as someone to be reckoned with in the industry, we talked about, Ducky, in a recent interview, we talked about how, it's easy to hate on people's work when you're behind a keyboard.
Yeah.
I was just saying, as a comedian, though, when the people are right there in front of you and hurling insults at you and booing at you and telling you that you suck and occasionally throwing shit at you, that abuse, that's what makes you into a better comedian.
What was that first sort of level up, that first sort of pivotal moment where it was like, this is like a real call that I'm getting right now?
Well, going back to kind of lead off the what I said with the Survivor album, when I was in, I think it was probably early junior high, my mom got me one of those calendars where it had one of the old Fillmore posters on each month.
Yeah.
And so I had 12 of the Fillmore posters in here. I'd never that was my first introduction to that entire scene, and I was like, wow, this is kind of
Yeah.
exactly what's in my head that I want to do.
Very cool intro.
Those early
Yeah, right.
Fillmore posters
And it
really
was all
kind
the
of
it
get
was all
you.
the it was all the classics, like Mouse and Kelly and Tootin, all my heroes who I eventually went on to meet. And
I'm gonna
well, it was
sorry, go.
Mouse and Kelly and Conklin and Tootin and Griffin and it's probably mostly those five. But yeah, so then at that point I realized, well, okay, posters are a thing. So that's kind of what I want to do. And then I did the Groovy Boot stuff, and then ended up traveling around a lot after school, Dead Tour and Fish Tour, and then ended up in Ithaca, New York, back in the later '90s. And this guy came in. I was actually running this poster store there at the time. This guy came in. He had a weekly radio program called Sharing in the Groove, and it was playing all the the second wave jam band stuff that was up and coming in the later '90s. And it was college town, so they were program got kind of popular, and the local venue, the Haunt, had asked them if they would start bringing in some of these bands because none of these bands were coming to town yet. And so this guy Stu Panansky, who was running the radio program, immediately came to me and said, "Hey, we're gonna start up this once a week program at the Hunt. We want to do this right. Let's do posters for it." I was like, "Okay, I can do that." And over the next 12 months, we did 36 posters. for bands like Sector 9, Slip, uh Deep Banana Blackout, Wise Monkey Orchestra.
Oh, I
The very
love the
what
Slip.
yeah,
Sorry,
it
I
was,
didn't have like.
no, no worries. It was yeah, they were great then. And then some of the very first Soul Live shows. Yeah, so got to meet all these bands from all over the place at the hunt that we were bringing into the hunt, and it went well. It was supposed to be once a week, but then it started getting more and more and more, and that's how we ended up with 36 posters over such a short time. And then when I left Ithaca, I moved to New York, moved to California, followed the last two pre-first hiatus Fish tours, east to west.
Wow.
Landed at Shoreline in October of 2000 and never left.
2003, 2004, just for context.
No, before that. 2000, right? You were just saying 2000.
Oh,
the last two tours
oh.
pre-first hiatus. Yeah, so ended up.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So like
followed the tours all the way
99,
out there.
2000.
Ended at those Shoreline shows in October 2000, right? And then so I was
Right.
there and
Wow.
just never left, and then stayed in California for the next 15 years before moving up to Oregon.
Nice.
But I had met all those bands doing all those posters for the haunt, and Jam Base, who were already friends of mine through tour, Andy Gadell and all those guys.
Shout out Jam Base.
Yeah, right. And
Yeah.
they were just getting to the point where they were going to start throwing shows out there in San Fran. So they asked me if I wanted to do posters for them. And so then we started doing some stuff for Humphreys and more Slip and oh man, so many other great bands that they were bringing in. And so all these bands that I had met in Ithaca, they knew of me from my name being on their posters. And then so this kind of just started the whole domino thing from there. And then those bands, when they got bigger and needed stuff, they reached out to me, and that's kind of the haunt became one of the bigger stepping stones to yeah.
So that was kind of like the genesis point of
actually
like
full on
big.
doing posters. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Nice.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah.
But then once I got out to San Francisco, I fell in with the Rock Poster Society. Found a
Shout
flyer
out TRPS.
on a poll one day saying, "Hey, we're doing this show," and I was like, "Well, what is that all about?" And went and checked it out, and sure enough, I got to, they were just starting throwing their shows, so they weren't really well attended, but all those guys were there. All the dudes that were the reason why I was doing what I was doing were sitting behind tables right there. So I walked
all
up
five?
and talked. Well, Rick was already gone at that point, but yeah, so I got to hang out with Randy Tootin for an hour, talk about making posters and stuff. Hang out with Conklin, with Mouse. I met all those guys at this first show I went to. This is probably November of 2000, and that really put it even more in motion. That's when I realized that what I had been doing in Ithaca, I could be doing right now. And this is where I wanted to be doing. One of the reasons why I ended up in the Bay Area is because that's where what I was doing had started, and I wanted to get to where that was. Yeah, so that was another step.
Just on that note of TRPS, though, it's really interesting that that's what you bring up, because I love TRPS. Haven't had the opportunity to make it there yet, but that experience that you just described is one of those things that I have always wanted to, like, walk up and meet Justin Hampton, meet Jermaine Rogers, meet Mark Spusta, the people who meet Ryan Kerrigan, meet Luke.
I was going to say, how are you not going to say his fucking name?
I've got his art right behind me. This man's right here. I've got more of his work than most artists I collect. And
so then, I guess, knowing your first pivotal moment, do you remember what your first paid gig was? Because we also talked about how it was kind of a first just about getting in for free. Do you remember your first one that was like, whoa, like people are gonna pay me to do this, like,
Yeah. Well, I mean, the let me think. Well, I mean, the Ithaca stuff was paid in the sense that I was paid minimally for actually getting them done and printing the posters.
Can I rephrase it slightly?
Sure.
Yes.
All right. What was the first gig that you got? First paid gig that you got where your thought was, is this happening? Is this real? Like
the most shocking call.
Your first fanboy call, let's say it, where like you got the call from the band, not you reached out, you got the call and you were like, I need somebody else to like read this and verify that I haven't gone insane.
Boy, I don't know. not so much a fanboy moment, but the first one that was kind of a kind of out of the blue that kind of shocked me a little bit was actually not even a call, but it was in person. I was vending my artwork. I vend my artwork at the High Sierra Music Festival every year, and
Cool.
this will be like year 23 for me this year, I think. But back in 2005, I was there, and part of my shtick is that I go and I'll set up the booth. I try not to even look at the names that are on the bill, and then I'll get my booth totally set up, put my chair out, grab some breakfast, and then I'll open up the pamphlet to see who's actually going to be there. And this one act caught my eye. It was Meltone. I was like, okay, that's interesting. I had no idea who they were. It turns out they're a band from Japan who was there for their first time playing in the States. And I was like, oh, cool. I'll have to check them out. And I didn't think about it again. Later that day, these two Japanese guys come into my booth, freak out, and run away. I turned to the other people in the booth. And I was like, well, that was pretty peculiar. And about 20 minutes later, they come running back with a third guy who happened. And it turns out they were in the band. They were three of the dudes in Meltone. They had gone to get the bass player Takuya because he had done some schooling in Virginia, so had a much better grasp of English. And through him, they explained that they knew my artwork through Fish Flot.
Wow.
And they were thrilled about it and so excited to see my art there. And then
Nice.
I'll never forget the quote from them. They're like, "We want to make you famous." I was like, "Okay,
wow.
man. Let me, great.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Let me hear you first. See if you guys are any good." And turns out they were great. I did go get a chance to hear the band, and I fell in love with it. I thought it was fantastic. And they came back and they kind of hung out all weekend and stuff. Super duper nice guys. And they were having their first CD was coming out like 3 or 4 months later, and they had me do the poster for their CD release party, which was in Tokyo. And so I thought that was pretty cool. I never thought I'd do a poster for a show in Tokyo or a band from Tokyo, that I just met.
I can confirm that that's cool. I will Secondhand Talent certified cool.